not as right for you. But before we dive into that, next week I will be hosting a writer's lunch about world building in the real world, which is even if you are not writing science fiction or fantasy, don't think that you get off easy. You still have to do world building. And we're going to talk about how you do it, why you do it, and why it's good for your book. So let's get into writing coaching. So we'll start, introduce ourselves. Um, Starting with Ian. Who are you and what do you like to write? What do you like to edit?
My name is Ian Michael Everett. What do I like to write? I like to write high concept fantasy, usually with like a kind of like a dark emotional twist on it. Right now, I'm working on a speculative space western about space cowboys that fight kaiju. But I've also written superhero fiction. Uh, I've written high fantasy, and I love all of these things. So I love editing that kind of work as well. Anything that kind of is a really interesting mishmash of genres, but typically speculative fiction of some kind.
All right. AP Hawkins.
Hi, everybody. I'm AP Hawkins or Anna Hawkins. I write as AP Hawkins, so that's why my little name in Zoom is AP Hawkins. But I write primarily science fiction and fantasy. I really enjoy kind of blended genre, like, the space in between genres where, you've got the sci fantasy or, things like that. So, yeah, I write a lot of short stories. I've had a few short stories published in like small press markets and literary journals such as Analog Science Fiction and Escape Pod. Um, yeah, and I also like to edit science, go figure. I like to edit the same genres I like to write. So I primarily edit science fiction and fantasy as well.
Shannon?
And so I'm Shannon Winton. I've been a developmental editor for about 14 years now. I have mostly focused in on science fiction and fantasy, as well as mystery, basically genre fiction, although I do enjoy working on upmarket fiction and that kind of thing. For my writing, I like to write sardonic bullshit, and it can cross the gambit of speculative fiction. But right now, I'm writing a short nonfiction piece for our blog over at tomersedits.com, but it'll also go up on our Substack newsletter site about why Meetup sucks and why we recently left and why the Houston Christian moms are coming for you.
They have
Yeah,
so many emails for us.
I know. But Shannon, thank you for mentioning our blog because you should absolutely, if you're looking for like, writing advice or, thoughts about genre and things like that, you should definitely check out our blog. We've got some really interesting stuff on there. And we kind of rotate out writing blog articles. So you'll find some from all of us up there. So.
All right, Sean.
Hi, I'm Sean Carroll. I editor. I help run Houston Writing Central. Try to work on community building and stuff. We'll be announcing some circus-themed zine events coming up pretty soon in July. I like to write and edit science fiction, bit of fantasy for sure, and more towards the literary side of things. Absolutely. I I have a coaching client now, so anonymize all of the information on that, but happy to be here and talking about my experiences with that, as well as Anna. Loved the idea that I didn't quite like. I missed the plot for a second, and you said analog science fiction, and I'm like, oh wait, should be a new category. Like it's the Dune world. The Butlerian jihad has happened, but it's still sci-fi. It's just no computers.
1980s world with tentacle aliens.
There you go.
Hmm.
Talking about tentacle aliens, I'm Daphne Strasser. I am
Great
as,
segue.
as a writer and editor, I focus on romance as well as horror, so tentacles fit both ways. Um,
But
Anyway, yeah, I focus on romance and horror, but I do edit fantasy, science fiction, and all those other lovely genre fictions, including YA. So let's talk about, first of all, let's talk about what coaching is and what coaching isn't. Who would like to start us off?
To be obnoxious because coaching is basically everything besides doing your taxes and being your assistant. Although there are some gray areas depending on who the coach is, on whether or not they're doing things that an assistant might do.
Yeah, the coaching can really come from like being just an accountability person, right? Saying, "Hey, did you write your 2,000 words this week?" Or all the way up to being like your full editor and doing like dev line and copy edit for your works. And depending on what you want, that can cost you a lot of money.
Mhm.
In terms of what it is not co-writing. We're still not going to write for you. But will help steer in those directions. To make your work a success.
Yeah, it's I like to think of it as kind of like, and it depends again on like what kind of coaching you want, because like Daphne and Shannon have said, it's kind of a spectrum, and you can have a wide range of things that you want from a writing coach. But if you have like a recurrent coaching relationship with an editor, it's really cultivating a long-term relationship with your editor so that your editor gets to know um, your work almost as well as you do and can really help you, when you're stuck, or, when you're looking for ideas, or, you really need something, like some developmental help or something like that.
Yeah, there's a few common scenarios that I think we see people coming in that want coach, right? They want a coach who either they have a project that they're really passionate about and they are struggling to finish it, either from a motivation perspective or they need someone to give them direction. Or they know their writing's not up to snuff and for a variety of reasons want someone to help them simply improve craft. So maybe not working on one single project, but wanting to do short stories or things like that.
I think one of the easiest ways to put it is that if you have a skill set that you're trying to work towards, whether it be in creating the storyline itself, and getting line level skills for your writing, to set yourself up with good habits as a writer, all the way up to some of the publishing level skills, especially for indie authors, on like what do I need to work on this week in order to publish my book successfully. So that might be like a coach saying, "Hey, have you written the copy for your listing yet? Or have you put your stuff up for pre-order yet? Or have you talked to people to be on your street team yet?" And so even though that kind of stuff is not quite as common as the skill sets for writing itself, that's still, there are people who provide that kind of coaching.
I think I can't help but think about, my own experience being coached, not in writing, but in sports, where, you know, they're going to be looking at, your skills, what your goal is for yourself. A lot of those things are going to change what a coach is going to do for you, but it's got to be very tailored to what you want and what you're doing.
Love that point. About thinking about it as if it's a team. You can't really see the other people and stuff like that, but tailoring it to what the person needs. Do you need to be running laps to build up your endurance? Okay, that's kind of the same as you should write, in these prescribed times. Do you need help with certain moves? I know you did Muay Thai, Ian. So certain strikes or memorization or dealing with a certain situation. You're great with your hands, but you're not great with your feet. Well, that might be you're good at dialogue, but you need description, vice versa, etc.
Mhm. And that can look a lot like writing exercises that develop those skills. I think that I've seen that happen a lot.
Now, Sean, with your editing clients before, you have had a sort of like coursework that they've gone through. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So generally what I do is 2 assignments per month with a bonus on there as well. The interesting thing about dealing with adults versus kids is you look at kids and you're like, I did well enough on the first, I don't need to do the rest. Well, you're paying for it as an adult, as a coaching client. And so very happy to see those filled in every time. But really it is working on something else, like analysis of somebody else's writing, reflecting on that, doing an activity involving that. And then the bonus would be, okay, take this lesson here and apply it to your own work. So oftentimes we're working on, okay, this is a chapter we're working on, and that's the specific one that we're both familiar with, and that we are trying to apply lessons to.
So next question for the group. Um, how do you know if it's a good time for you to approach coaching, right? Where you are in your process, if it would be a good idea to involve a coach.
In a vacuum, everyone thinks they're doing great.
Yeah.
And then if you're putting it out there and not getting a response, if you're, if you don't have a group that you're working with, a critique group or anything, and you're trying to find out, what what your work relates to, what it's bouncing off of, what people's reactions are to it, and it's just not hitting, or the answers you're getting are like the mom answer, oh, that's great, honey, I loved it so much, but not really feedback, then then that might be where you're like looking for coaching. I love the idea as well that you guys brought up, which is if you just can't finish, I that's about time management, and that's a different one. I have had a coaching client who's very specifically like, I have ADD, I know that, and I need work on this. Oh, the rabbit hole that my autist brain went down to be like, okay, how can we make this work for this person? It was very fun.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it really kind of depends. There are people who they don't want to worry about whether feedback is coming from somebody who may not show up, or they've had bad experiences with critique groups and people who don't know how to critique without it being like vicious and personal. And in those cases, it's a lot better to hire somebody who's a professional who can give you feedback in a professional way, or who actually knows what they're talking about, and that may not be what they've run into, or as you said, you've written yourself into a corner and you're like, I don't know how to get out of this. Like, I thought it was going to go this direction when I started writing, and it went this other direction, and I don't know what to do, and I need help unsticking myself. So both of those things, are legitimate reasons to reach out and ask for help. So in general, coaching is like, you have a problem again, and you don't know how to fix it. Um, and you want somebody who's been either through the ringer or who has a lot of experience working with different writers. And you want somebody to basically make a solution on your behalf because they know what they're doing, and you're in a situation where you kind of don't. And that's totally legitimate. As Sean said, there's all sorts of ways of coaching. I have also had coaching for neurodivergent people where I've sat there with them during their writing time so that they can body double or mirror. And that's still legitimate coaching, even though I didn't really touch the manuscript at all. But it was, a set time where they had somebody to come sit down and get things done, so they didn't look back at the end of the week and go like, shit, I've wasted all my time. So there's lots of different reasons to get into coaching. Another good one is if you don't want to take a writing class because you want to have an education tailored to you. Because the places where you need help with, either you're not sure about, or you simply want to focus on the things that you specifically need help with, and you don't want to sit through like a 6-week, 8-week, 12-week course, at the community college or what have you, to learn about how to write when you have all the other skills. You just need to work on this specific set of things, or you want somebody to pivot to where your weaker skill sets are, instead of having to go through an entire uh, semester of working on some broad issues. So it can be a lot of things. that
Yeah.
trigger you to go into coaching.
I think, Shannon, I to your point, like, again, coaching is a spectrum and it can really be tailored to your specific individual needs as a writer and like what you need and what you want from a coach. But a lot of people who are just starting out, I feel like don't really know what they need or what they want or like what options are available. So it can be really hard to like, figure out, okay, how do I approach this? What do I ask for? Who do I look for? And so what I would say in terms of how do you know when it's a good idea to approach coaching is, like Shannon said, if you're trying to write and you know you're having an issue, even if you don't know exactly what that issue is, or you don't really have any conceptualization in your mind of what you might need from a writing coach, it's still, might be a good idea to approach one and say, hey, I don't really know what my options are here. I don't know what I need. Can you help me? And a good writing coach can give you advice and can kind of help, can look at, kind of maybe what you've written or, your notes or whatever, and can kind of steer you toward a coaching relationship that is, beneficial for you specifically. So yeah, don't be afraid to like reach out to a writing coach if you're not sure. Or even, and like that also applies to editing as well. Like don't be afraid to reach out if you're not sure what's going on. Like just come to an editor, come to a coach and ask. Be like, I don't know what I need, but I need help. So please help me.
That can be how someone ends up with a coach as well, is to bring something to an editor and be like, I'd like this to have a copy edit, and the editor might be like, you're not there yet. You can either take that at face value and be like, okay, I'll go back and I'll work on it again. But if you don't have a path forward, your first draft, is what you're trying to turn in, things like that. Or you're having craft issues where the learning, which we're all trying to do all the time, and it's all a long process. This is a marathon, not a sprint in any way. I just want to fast track that. So you can ask them, editors, about options, about what should I do, to kind of push this forward.
Yeah, there's.
And I love that.
Oh, go ahead, Shannon.
I was gonna say, I love that you pointed out that you talked to an editor already. We've had coaches from clients who took their book to be developmentally edited, and the editor basically said, hey, your book unfortunately is going in too many directions. I think on a, fundamental kind of building block level, you need to work with a coach to figure out what you really want to write, and then also work on some foundational, like mechanical writing skills. And so that's unfortunately not totally uncommon for that to be a route into coaching. And it sucks because that, that's built on, in some ways, rejection of what you've already written. But you'll also see that where, somebody has sent a query out to an agent, and the agent has said, we're interested in the topic, but we need you to go back and work on your writing style. And then you'll end up looking for a coach to help you in that regard too. So if you're very lucky, you will get some direct feedback on why those rejections are happening, or why your story isn't ready in its current form, so that you can work with a coach. And then you'll end up trying to find somebody who can help you with those skill sets.
It can be very hard to hear that like your writing's just not there yet, but fortunately your writing is something that can be improved. So especially if you have a good concept and a strong story idea, the writing aspect of it is something that you can absolutely work on, and that is where coaches excel. But it can be hard, especially if you've started the query process, to figure out what exactly it is that you're hearing back from agents or publishers, because you'll get form rejections a lot. And a form rejection for whatever reason is like, hey, thanks for submitting, but it's not for me right now. And you don't know if that's because of your writing, your concepts, or what, because they don't have time to give you personalized feedback every time, which is where professionals can come in. I know we have a few different ways to deal with coaching. We have one-on-one sessions, one-on-one, one-off sessions, which is I think I just need an hour of your time to really think through my book. Am I starting in the right place, or is this plot hole something I can fix, or which of my characters should I be doing this with? If you have like a specific question with your book, a 1 hour coaching session might be like all that you need. And then there are also relationships with a coach, which is I'm going to pay you monthly and I'm going to get either the kind of structured lessons that Sean was talking about earlier, or structured feedback, which is every month I'm allowed to submit a certain number of words and I'm going to get feedback on those from my editor. And that works if you are trying to finish your book, and you just want that feedback consistently to keep yourself motivated and keep yourself knowing that you're going in the right direction.
The other thing that I think you haven't mentioned yet is plot or storyboard consultations, and
The
that
build a
is something
book,
that we
yeah.
do as well. Build the book, where you'll sit down with your existing outline and work through it to make sure, especially like with science fiction and fantasy, where the world building can be really extensive and it can overshadow story, or if it's inconsistent, that it can like kind of break some of the plot switches and stuff. You'll sit down with a coach who can help you with the logistics of how things happen and help you make sure that you're hitting expected beats in the story. In some ways, we can also work on the arcs and how fast stuff occurs in the book to make sure you're not going too fast in some spaces and too slow, or at least your planning isn't going to put you in a position where you're having to rush the ending and that kind of thing. So generally, we like to work on this in at least 2 sessions, and they can be a little bit intensive. The ones I do are usually about 3 hours long per session, but not every coach will do it quite like that.
So next question is, how do you find a coach that fits your style?
This one's kind of rough, unless they will do like a free consult. If you can actually sit down and have a conversation with the person, it's a lot easier to tell if you're going to engage with each other and communicate well.
That's it. Get a lesson zero. Get a lesson zero. I if this is something that seems like it's good in your workflow and that you feel like you're learning from, because I've done that with clients and having had a few coaching clients be able to take some of a previous lesson, be like, this will apply to a new person. Let me show you an example of the kind of work that it is. And then move on from, does this work for you? Give them a review of the work that they've turned in, not like a whole month's work, but like a half,
Yeah, I would say definitely if you can get a Zoom interview or sit down interview with them, that's probably the best way to get an idea of. Ask them what sort of feedback do they usually provide? What is their critique philosophy, which can be, some editors are really like raised earth when it comes to critique. Like they are going to hold no punches, which you want your editor to be honest. But some editors are kind in their honesty and some editors are mean, and various people want various things. I've had people approach me before, they're like, be as brutal as possible, because that's what they want to hear. So if you are someone that needs your editor to protect you a little bit, which is totally valid in the artistic pursuits, if you need your editor to be someone that approaches truth with kindness, make sure that you are looking for that editor. You can find, when you look for writing coaches, sometimes they have samples, sometimes they have testimonials. They will often talk about the kinds of works that they want to work with. So if you have a science fiction work, don't be going and finding a coach that works predominantly with memoir. You want someone that fits your genre.
Another idea, and this is something that comes from like the querying side when you're querying agents, but I think it also can apply to coaching here. If they don't have any like testimonials visible on their site, send them an email and ask if you can get put in contact with any of their former or current clients, and then you can talk to their clients about their style. And that's what people suggest authors do when they're querying agents, is to get a list of the agent's writing clients
This work,
and
yeah.
Yeah, contact some of them to kind of try to vet this agent before you sign a contract with them. Do the same thing with a writing coach. And you may get, really honest opinions from a coach's clients, or if they don't have any clients to send to you, that might also be a sign of like, maybe you should look elsewhere. So
I
I
think check.
forgot one kind of coaching that we do. It's not listed on our website. I say we, but it's usually me. But it's the consultation stuff I'll do with the indie authors, where I'll help them rewrite their Kindle listing, or I'll go through the keyword clouds and find stuff, or I'll help them figure out genre expectations and things like that. That's a little bit higher level coaching, but that does exist.
More of like a publishing ready kind of coaching, which
Yeah.
that is a totally different skill set from writing your book. It is, how do I market or put my book out there for people? And that is definitely something that if you need help with, you should find someone.
Yeah. And we don't have it on our register. I mean, I'm trying to yank Anna into that direction because she does have a background working with nonfiction copy and stuff like that. But uh, it's worth looking into that as well if you're trying to publish your book, and you don't really know where to start inside of that indie world, or you're seeing a bunch of conflicting information and you don't know who to trust. So I want to interject that in there real quick.
Um, Next question that everyone always wonders. So what can I expect to pay for this? I know that we have what is called the cheerleader. And cheerleader is $50 a month. And that is, I am in your corner. I am here to help you and be your emotional support editor. And I'm an accountability person to make sure that you are getting those words in that you want to get in. We also have our one-offs. I'm gonna have to go look at our website, but I'm pretty sure it's like 175 for the one-off coaching.
It might be 150. It really depends on the coach and what they're doing, to be honest. What we try to, I'm presuming we're okay discussing this, but we
Yeah,
try
yeah.
to do is make sure that your coach, your editor, whoever, is making a certain amount per hour. And so a lot of coaching, especially with pre-work, means that we're going to be working about 3 hours on every actual like coaching session, including the time we're with you. So when you're thinking about how much you expect to pay an editor per hour, I would suggest multiplying that by at least two, but probably three, to encompass the work that they're going to do. And that includes if they're reading samples, if they're giving actual feedback, if they're writing up their critiques, or they're, communicating with you. Even with that cheerleader, we're spending at least 15 minutes every week trying to communicate with you, writing emails, see if there's anything that we can do to help with reminders, or spitball solutions when life gets in the way and that kind of thing. So when you see the amount, it may feel very like uncomfortable, but recognize like it's not just the 1 hour, it's probably 3 hours you're looking at per session. If you are just coming in and having a shoot the shit conversation, that coaching session should probably be a little bit less. But it really does depend on what your coach is trying to make in order to live. But I think you're right. It's either 150 or 175 we have for a basic consultation. And again, it's because we're expecting that is going to be 3 or so hours of work on our part, on your behalf, though.
And that's without prep work. Mine,
No,
the,
that's
the
with
kind
prep
that I
work.
typically do is a little bit more. I involved one meeting per month plus writing lessons, two different lessons, researching and relating that to the work you're doing. I would say about $700 a month. For some coaching that I've done lately. But it is, giving you something to do throughout the month while you're editing your work, so it's not overwhelming. And really trying and tailoring it to what you're looking for to improve in your work. Based on the editor's feedback or based on other feedback that you've had as well.
Yeah, I know there are other coaches who also offer things such as like write-ins, right? So they'll have coaching that involves kind of basically group therapy, but
Yeah.
they'll get all of their coaching clients together in a Zoom call so everyone can either discuss their work or work on their stuff. And so those sorts of things, just facilitating that will be something more like $200 a month, from when I was looking at those. There's also coaches that do like monthly critique. So you might send them $2,500 or 2,500 words a month. $2,500 a lot. A month is a lot.
Words.
2,500 words a
Twen-
month to get feedback on it. And again, that's going to be like more like $300, $400 for getting that feedback. So economically, does it make sense to have a coach as opposed to getting a manuscript evaluation at the end of your book? If what you are looking for is a full manuscript evaluation, you should wait and save up for that. It will be cheaper in the long run. But if you also need that help along the way, that is what you're paying your coach for.
Yeah.
I was
And
gonna
it's worth
say,
thinking like, I'm sorry, Anna, go on.
oh, I was just gonna say when you mentioned some coaches do things like write-ins, I was gonna say we do that for free.
We do those for
We
free.
have a monthly write-in, you know,
In Houston, though. We
In
don't
Houston.
have online
in
write-ins.
Houston, we have a monthly write-in. We do those for free. So like, come
There's
to us for
also-
other stuff because we give you a lot of free stuff.
There's also
That-
free monthly write-ins in Dallas through
Mhm.
Dallas Fiction Writers, and we have a Discord server where you can connect with other authors for free again.
Yeah, in our Discord server, we do answer questions and we allow like people to ask questions, community answers questions about craft or about what they should do. To an extent, just giving one offhand piece of advice should not require a paywall. For sure. It's when you need ongoing help or you're dealing with like a big complex problem that I feel like we recognize that the time that we're spending answering those questions deserves fair payment. But at the same time, like I think as a baby author, trying to figure things out is hard. And just depending on your life situation, it may be worth it to pay someone to help, but it may also make more sense for you to get a critique group, knowing critique groups can fall apart, critique groups can have bad advice, critique groups, depending on how they're made, may not have people in them who actually read and enjoy your genre. So there's trade-offs there for sure. One of the other things that you may want to look in is actual writing classes if the coaching costs are too dear. And that's totally understandable. But again, the trade-off there is that you are working for, a semester or so, presumably, to get the same skills that we might be able to cover and work on strictly on your behalf over the course of like 2 or 3 sessions. So there are other things out there than coaching. If they are going to be as good as coaching, maybe not, but there's that whole thing where you can do something, like quick, cheap, or well. And coaching is the quick and well, but it's not cheap.
Pick
So
two.
unfortunately,
Pick
that is
two,
a
you're not
trade-off.
going to get 3.
Right.
But it's a toolkit. It's building a toolkit of the resources that work for you, and the free, the cheap, the expensive. Like you're setting yourself up for that. So, Tomeworks has a monthly write-in for sci-fi, fantasy, horror genre writers. Shut Up and Write in Houston does a weekly one. Houston Writing Central does a weekly one. Imprint does a weekly one, and Imprint, as well as Grackle and Grackle, offer a lot of good classes. And it's just looking at what class is going to hit you. With coaching, you're talking very specifically about your work. If you're looking at classes that are out there, you're going to be like, what do I want to work on, and do I fit into that class structure?
Mhm.
Another thing you may want to look at is if you do have writing or literary conventions around you, if they have writing workshops that you can join. Again, there's usually a paid element to those, but it may be less expensive or at least give you a place to start to help you figure out where you need to go from there. And then if you still are confused or you're not sure what to do, or if you're at one of those and you talk to an agent, and that's how you get that direct feedback from the agent that you need to work on skills, that can all be really beneficial in helping you determine what you should do next.
And this will be our final question, then we'll open it up for everybody else. How can you get the most out of coaching?
Show up and do the work.
Do the work.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say
Yeah.
the same thing. I was
Yeah.
gonna say actually do what your coach tells you to do.
Yeah.
Your coach gives
Be
you an assignment, write the assignment. You are
yeah.
paying them. If you are paying them to review 2,500 words a month, write 2,500 words a month and give it to them.
Yeah. Be proactive in communicating with them too on what you need and what you are, if you, for instance, you can't meet whatever you've already set up to expect, let them know. Don't just like disappear. You want to
Yeah.
actually communicate any issues that you might have.
These are all the answers that could have gotten you A's in all of your classes in school, and now we're adults and we're supposed to have learned all of these lessons.
Yeah.
And
Feel like one of the oh, sorry, go on, Daphne.
I was gonna say another part of it is do not be embarrassed because your coach is there to help. So it does not matter what your question is. If you have it, it is a legitimate question, just ask it.
So what I was going to say is I think a lot of people want to be like leveled up very quickly. And when they come and we start talking about schedules, they're like, "Oh no, I'm going to write 3,000 words a week and I'm going to turn things in and I'm going to," and a lot of times, especially if I don't know the person, I say, "Hey, let's hold on. Let's maybe just schedule 2 or 3 sessions. Um, let's make sure that the amount of work actually fits your schedule and the way your brain works and how fast you can push your own creativity." But I think if you go in and you're gung ho and you have this big dopamine rise that you're doing the thing, that's going to run out. Usually, in about a month, it's going to run out, and then you're not going to have the endurance to continue on. So if your coach is saying, "Hey, maybe we should only do 2 times a week," listen to them. They may have some experience here, because what we don't want you to do is try to like brute force your way through learning. Because your stamina may fail, and we don't want you to stop writing, and we don't want to set you up for that failure. So having a realistic expectation of what you can actually do to engage with the coaching activities, especially if it's one where we're giving you assignments, I think that's really important. And also breathe, because it is a marathon. It's not a sprint. I think Daphne said that already. And people who approach it as a sprint, they tend to burn out really fast, and the coaching isn't as effective for them. And we don't want that for you.
Yeah. Yeah, building a career as a writer, as much as I hate to say it because I wish it was all about skill, it's really like 80% perseverance. If you're good, but you can't finish anything, then you can't build a career as a writer. If you're not good, but you can finish things, then you'll have a better chance of building a writer career because skills can be built. And, even if you start out, everyone starts out somewhere. And if you start out not very good, you can get better. And that's what your coach is there to help you with. But you do have to be able to like persevere even when it's hard. And that's also something that your coach can help you with because like Shannon said, you can't go from writing nothing to writing 2,000 words a week. It doesn't work like that.
Anyone
Um,
who started
or
NaNoWriMo knows how it
right,
feels at the end of the month. And you're
right.
like, no more.
Right, exactly. So, your coach can help you build that writing stamina that you need to actually finish what you start. So yeah. And they can also help you build the skills that you need if you're already good at finishing things. So it can go either way.
Do we want to ask for questions in the chat if
Yeah.
anybody has
Yep.
any?
At this point, we're going to open it up to y'all's questions. You can put them in the chat or you can raise your hand, unmute, whatever, if you have any more questions about coaching.
I think one
Other
we
than that,
haven't talked about, but if people put it in the chat after I asked this one, but what do deliverables look like with coaching? That one is confusing for a lot of new authors.
That what looks like?
Your
Deliverables.
deliverables, like what is a coach going to hand back to you, or how are they going to give you a product, right? Or
Yeah.
feedback? What does that look like?
Well, I think that depends that depends on again like what kind of coaching relationship that you have. But if you're starting up coaching, you should make sure that your writing coach that you're talking with is transparent about what the deliverables are. That they tell you very clearly, like, okay, we're going to meet once a month and I'm going to read a section of your work and I'm going to give you a verbal critique and inline comments. And those are the deliverables every month. Versus someone who's like, oh yeah, well, whenever you write 2,000 words, we'll meet and then we'll talk about it. And that's like not very well-defined deliverable. So you need to make sure when you're talking to a coach, whatever deliverables they have are like very clearly defined for you, so you know exactly what to expect.
Look for a coach that is very specific about what it's going to be, because that protects both you and them, right? So if a coach says every month on the 28th, your 2,500 words are due. I will respond within 2 weeks, so you'll get your feedback on the 14th. It will be inline notes and a paragraph of my opinion. Once a month, we have a 30-minute Zoom meeting. You have to schedule it by such and such date, right? So it's going to look really overwhelming, but that is to protect you, because what you want is you want to say, hey, I sent you my 2,500 words. I should have my feedback by now. So look for specificity, not just you'll send me 2,000 words, no idea when. I'll give you feedback, no idea when, no idea what that feedback's going to be. Because you don't want to pay for coaching and send them your stuff and get back a single sentence email that says looks good, right? That's not what you want.
Or that it's focusing on stuff that you're not really concerned about. Like if you're trying to figure out your line level skills and you're doing it in, these short stories where you're not super duper worried about the plot, and then they come back with a bunch of plot responses instead of letting you know if you set mood and tone, that's not as beneficial to you either. So clear expectations for what the coach is going to focus on is also something that I would suggest doing, especially if you're getting into nitty gritty stuff like that.
Right.
I actually have something. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Shannon.
No,
Oh,
go ahead.
If you don't want copy editing, if you want them to focus on your characterization, that needs to be set up front. Because if someone corrects all your commas and that's not what you were looking for, that coaching time has been wasted.
So I actually made a coaching deliverable for plot consultations that I used in a class I did for the Editorial Freelancers Association, that I feel like we could show off if nobody has other questions. When we do plot consultations, they're usually out loud verbally, but one of the things that I like to do and that we do at Tomeworks is that we will send you a written list of the things that we talked about, because there's no way you're going to remember everything, right? So I'm going to see if I can share my screen so you can get a sense. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take it out of my one giant 70 billion Chrome tab.
Oh, Shannon, no, not the 70 million.
You know how I am. You know exactly how I am.
I've seen your emails.
Okay, so if you are able to see this, great. If not, tell me. So this is not a real client. I want to make sure that that is clear. I am not sharing anybody else's IP. But this is from a plot consultation. And, in here, I'm giving the actual pitch for the client's book, so that they have an understanding of what we think we are writing or what we think you are writing as the client. I'll also talk about genre. Not every coach is going to do this, but I feel like it's important to know the genre that you are working in, or the genres that you would probably put the book in when you put it on Kindle, even if you end up ultimately sending it to agents for traditional publishing, to make sure that you know the tropes and the genre expectations, and that you can kind of look those up. Especially if an author doesn't know where they're coming from, or they send me comps that don't really fit, that are in a different subgenre, I'll put that in there. And then we'll talk about the things that we discussed during our coaching session, especially if you're coming in with like, I have this plot point that I need to get to happen, don't know how to do it. And then we're changing a bunch of structural stuff. I want to write it down for you so that you remember what you're supposed to do. So you don't get to chapter 7 and go, fuck, what did we say we were going to do? I know we have an answer. I don't know what it is. It's 3 a.m. I'm not going to go call the coach. And so that's a lot of what this kind of section is. And I'm going to go through this because you guys have not read the book, but just be, aware. And then if we don't know what we did, or sorry, let me re-speak. If we don't have an answer, and I have to go back and think about logistics to help you, I will go ahead and put some of those things in. If I have other concerns, because you sent me samples, sometimes I will also put that in there. For this particular one, the gender of the main character is kind of amorphous because it's multiple people in one body. So I, was like, hey, this is how you fix it at the line level. You don't have to come back and get extra coaching for me to do that. And then the next steps. If I've given somebody homework, if there's more things that they're supposed to do for coaching, if there's more stuff that they need to do in order to set up their plot, in between our first session and our second session, all of that, I will make sure that it is listed so that you can find it. So most of the time, coaching doesn't have a physical deliverable like this, but if you are doing something that is like ongoing or that is a multi-step process, it's important to me that you have that roadmap to use so that you have a functional way to actually put what we talked about into action.
If there are no more questions, then we're going to let you all go. Thank you so much for coming, and join us next week where we're going to talk about world building in the real world.
Awesome.
Great fun.
Bye. Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, y'all.